Hey y'all, welcome to a new What's for Dinner. First up, I made a big old pot of some loaded, cheesy potato soup. This is one of our favorite meals to have, and it's definitely a fall staple around here. Now, I have been using the same recipe for this for several years now, and we just like it so good. I have never felt the need to go out and try to find a different recipe for it, but something came over me, and I finally tried out a different recipe for it. So I started off by frying up a half a package of bacon. We like ours pretty crispy, so once it got to that stage, I removed it to a paper towel lined plate. Next, I gathered up my red potatoes. This is about 3 pounds, and I'm going to wash those and chop them, of course. As you can see, there's probably about 3 to 4 tablespoons of bacon grease left over, I would say. I didn't think that was too much, so I just left it in there. That's just going to be extra flavor in the soup. And I just absolutely loved that I didn't have to peel those potatoes because that is one of my least favorite tasks. So that was a big time saver right there. But I'm just adding in the liquid that I want to cook the potatoes in. So I did 3 cups of chicken broth and about 6 cups of milk. I'm using 2%. And then I'm just going to get this seasoned well with some Lorry seasoned salt. I go decently like heavy handed because potatoes need a lot of salt. And I'm just going to let that boil until the potatoes are tender. So in a separate saucepan, I'm going to melt down 1 stick of butter, and I'm going to add in a half a cup of just some plain all-purpose flour, and I'm going to whisk that together really good, let that cook out for a few minutes, and then I'm going to start ladling in that like hot soup right into that butter flour roux mixture. I think that's called tempering. Correct me if I'm wrong. Again, stirring that really well, and then I'm just going to dump that straight into the pot. And I did this after the potatoes were, already cooked. And this is going to thicken up the soup, and it's also going to give it a nice butter flavor. Butter and potatoes go hand in hand. But after I got this added, it started to thicken up like pretty instantly, and we do like a thicker potato soup. So now I'm going to season this with some onion powder, garlic powder, lots of black pepper, and it did need a little bit more salt. I gave it a taste test, and it definitely needed it. I'm just getting those seasonings mixed in real quick, and then I'm going to dump in 2 cups of shredded cheese. I did shred it myself. It melts better, and this is sharp cheddar. I'm also going to be adding in some heavy cream. I just used what was left in the carton. If I had to guess, this was probably around like a third cup. And I just stirred that until the cheese melted. And that is it. This is very easy. And just look at this consistency and color. It's like perfectly creamy and velvety and cheesy. It looks perfect if you ask me. But I did attempt to make some homemade rolls to go along with this, and I was super excited about it, and these were an absolute fail. Basically, you're supposed to heat up like a milk, honey, butter mixture and put your yeast in that in the beginning. I got the mixture too hot, so it killed the yeast, and I decided to try to go on with the recipe like I do with everything else when I mess up, figuring it would work itself out, but you cannot do that with baking. They were unedible, and I was so bummed. It would have went so well with this, but I'll try again. It's all good, I guess. But as you can see, I just topped this with some extra cheese and bacon, black pepper, and some dried chives, and it was absolutely delicious. Like, I hate to say it, but this was better than my recipe I've been making all these years. And if you try it, I really think that you will not be disappointed. It was absolutely perfect and everything that I would want in a potato soup. Recently, we went to a baby shower where they had a nacho bar that was so good that I have been craving it ever since. So I decided to make my own version at home. So in this bag, I have 2 pounds of some cooked up ground beef that I froze back in May. On the bag, it says that I seasoned it with some salt, pepper, garlic, and onion powder. And I'm just going to simply dump that into the crock pot. I left it frozen. I just kind of had to break it up into pieces to make it fit. But this is my first time using this like 3-section crock pot. This was my mother-in-law's, and it was gave to me after her passing. It was still new in the box, which makes me really sad that she never got to use it. One thing that we shared together was our love for food and cooking, and I just miss her like crazy, and using her things definitely does bring some comfort, whether she used them or not. I'm just thankful to have anything of hers. But That's my little crock pot talk, but now I'm going to add in a cup of salsa. If you are new here, I do blend up my salsa, mainly because I hate onions, and that's the only way I can enjoy salsa. And then you'll need 3 tablespoons of taco seasoning or a packet, and that's it, just 3 ingredients. I also wanted to mention that you can follow this exact recipe and use raw ground beef instead of cooked ground beef. You will just want to, of course, use a lower fat version so it doesn't end up greasy, but it'll turn out the same. So I'm going to cook mine on low all day long. In the second crock pot, I'm going to dump in a can of nacho cheese. The Rico's brand is our favorite. It's like a staple in our house. I always have some in my pantry. I do hate that the price has gone up though, but we still buy it because we think it's worth it. And I'm just going to let this cook on warm until it's closer to dinner time, and then I'll bump it up to low, but that don't take no time at all to heat up. And in that third crock pot, I'm just going to dump in a can of refried beans, and I'm going to treat it the same way as I talked about with the nacho cheese. I'm just going to cook it on warm until closer to dinner time, and I will also doctor these up later. I'm just trying to get everything dumped out and kind of prepped and ready. And yeah, I had a really great first experience with this little 3-section crock pot. I think the idea is so genius. It's really nice being able to cook 3 different things at 3 different temperatures if I wanted to. But anyways, so about 30 minutes before dinner, I did bump the cheese and beans up to the low setting. Took no time at all to heat up. And with my canned refried beans, I always just add in a little bit of sour cream and shredded cheese. And those 2 ingredients make a world of a difference. It makes them 100 times better. I have been saying this for so long. So here's my little setup. That taco meat turned out incredible. The salsa gave it so much flavor, and that low and slow cook time made the meat just so much more tender and just more flavorful. And it was just so much better than like cooking it on the stovetop. I highly recommend. So of course we had some tortilla chips laid out. For the toppings, we have some shredded cheese, shredded lettuce, tomatoes, and some lime wedges. And also set out some sour cream and taco sauce. And that Great Value taco sauce is super good, by the way, if you haven't tried it. It's always really hard to get where I'm from anyways. It's like always out of stock, I guess, because it's so good. But here is my plate. I put everything on it that I just mentioned. I did put the beans on the side, and I also found a little like guacamole cup in the fridge that needed to be used. So went perfectly with this. But this was like the easiest meal ever, but it was so very good. We all really enjoyed it. And the best part was how much my kids enjoyed it. They love being able to like make their own plate. And then we sat down and watched a movie to go along with it. And it was super fun, and I can't wait to do it again. The next night, Josh took me out for my birthday dinner, so I figured I would include it. We went to Malone's in Lexington, Kentucky. They had the best butter that goes with the bread. It's like a chive butter. We got the Lexingtonian salad, and I got the Coach Cow's chicken. It may look a little underwhelming, but it was extremely good. And he got the fish, which is another one of my favorites from there. Next up, I made a chicken and rice casserole. Chicken and rice is another one of those like family favorites, especially for Josh and the kids. They really, really love it, like in any form that I make it. So I started off with a 9x13 casserole dish. I sprayed it with some Pam so that nothing would stick. And I'm skipping the mixing bowl. I'm just going to do it all right here in this dish. So I added in 4 cups of chicken broth. I did use a lower sodium version. Putting in 2 cans of cream of celery. If you don't like cream of celery, it's completely fine. Just swap it for whatever cream of soup you do like. I know cream of mushroom's another really popular one for this recipe. We don't like the mushroom one though. I also melted in 4 tablespoons of butter. And here I'm just adding in 2 cups of some white long grain rice that is uncooked. I did wash it first, and here I'm just kind of evenly distributing that throughout the dish. Now I'm seasoning it up with some salt, pepper, garlic powder, and some paprika. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but my paprika has changed color, and I don't know why. It's not that bright red color that it should be. It's not expired. I keep it in my spice cabinet. I have no clue what has happened, and it is blowing my mind. So if that has happened to anyone else, or if you know why that could be, please let me know. So anyways, I grabbed a pack of chicken with 3 chicken breasts in it. I never cut chicken like this, but I needed to keep it thick because of the long cook time. So season this with whatever you want to. I'm going in with my blackened seasoning because I haven't used it in a while, and I try to really be good about rotating through my spices, make sure I'm using up what I got. And I do really like this one. So I'm just seasoning the underside first. You don't have to use chicken breast. You can use chicken thighs or like any bone-in chicken. I don't recommend chicken tenderloins though, because those cook up so quick. They would not be good in this. But anyways, I'm just placing that on top of the like soupy rice. So there's 6 good portions. Also, 2 cups of like uncooked rice makes a lot. Like there was so much rice. So much rice. But anyways, I'm just seasoning the top with some more of that blackened seasoning. And it's very important to make sure that you tightly cover your dish with foil, because it really needs to create a lot of steam to cook the rice properly. I'm using like a heavy duty tin foil. The recipe said to bake this at 375 degrees for an hour and 15 minutes, then take off the foil and finish it for a final 10 minutes. So I was really worried about the chicken getting dried out, but I read lots of reviews, all which were really good. But as long as I've been cooking, I should know that all ovens cook so different, just like all crock pots cook so different. And I honestly think that my oven cooks like really hot. So this chicken did turn out good. It had a really nice texture to it. It wasn't chewy or rubbery or anything like that, but it was a little on the dry side, just like I was worried about. But the rice turned out very, very good. We still, like, even though the chicken was dry, we still did really enjoy this dish. And I would even go as far as saying this will be my go-to chicken and rice casserole. I would just adjust the cooking time next time. I think I'll do like 45 minutes with the full on and then 15 minutes without it, because the rice was like super soft. So I know that I could cook it for a bit less and the chicken come out juicy. On this day, I made northern beans and ham in the crock pot, and that ham back there was my inspiration for making this meal. Josh picked that up at the store and said that he wanted to use it to make sandwiches, so we used half of it for sandwiches for lunch and then the other half for this recipe. So in my crock pot, I added in that full package of the beans. It was like 1 pound and 4 ounces, I believe. I washed it really well, made sure to sort through it and pick out any bad beans, check for rocks, all that good stuff. And then I took, like I said, half of that ham. It comes pre-sliced, so it took no time at all to just cube it up real quick. Threw that in on top of the beans, and I'm just going to season all this with a good amount of onion powder. And then I'm just going in with some salt and pepper, and you can always add more of that in the end if there's not enough. And I'm going to be using 6 cups of chicken broth for the liquid. I have never cooked like soup beans with chicken broth. I've always used water, so that was a first for me, but I've heard a lot of people say to do that, so I definitely wanted to try it. I've also never cooked soup beans in a crock pot, and I don't think I've ever bought like the white beans. I know my parents used to make it a lot, but pretty sure I've never bought them, so, or at least the dried kind. I bought it in a can, but yeah, lots of firsts. So anyways, the recipe said to cook that on low for 8 hours. I checked mine around the 6-hour mark, and they were perfectly tender, so I just flipped it on over to the warm setting and let that go until it was dinner time. So as you can see, these are very soft, and they have thickened up a lot, which is what I really like in a soup bean. I don't really like it to be too thin. So to me, this is perfect. So what is soup beans without some cornbread? So this is the same recipe I've been using the last couple of years. I start by measuring out 6 tablespoons of some shortening. I pop that in the oven while it's preheating to 450 degrees, and that'll melt quickly. I measure out a cup of cornmeal, a half a cup of all-purpose flour, a teaspoon of salt. Give the dry ingredients a quick mix. I'm going to add in, usually I do a cup of buttermilk. I didn't have quite enough, so I just added some regular milk, and then you'll need an additional half cup of regular milk. I'm doing 1 egg, a tablespoon of baking powder, and a half a teaspoon of baking soda. As always, I will have the recipe linked in my description box. I know that no one's going to remember that. But I'm taking that melted shortening, and I just drizzle it in that batter while I'm mixing it the whole time. That way that egg does not scramble. And then I pour it back into the hot cast iron skillet. As you can see, it's kind of bubbling up the sides. And I'm going to bake that for around 20 minutes. And it should come out looking like this, nice and perfectly golden brown. Of course, I had to top it with a pat of butter, and it turned out good like it always does. And the soup beans came out amazing. They had such a great flavor. They were so like perfectly tender, and I just love how low effort this meal was. Very few ingredients, and these type of meals will always be my favorite because life gets busy and we all need easy meals just like this. Now we are on to the last dinner in this video. So I made something a little bit more intimidating, at least for me. This is going to be a Birria ramen. So I started off by putting together this seasoning blend. And again, this recipe will be in my description box, but it's basically a combination of onion and garlic powder, chili, cumin, oregano, and some seasoned salt. I have a little over 3 pounds of a chuck roast. I always buy those when they are on sale. I don't buy them full price, but I've had this one in my freezer for a few months. And as you can see, I had more spices than what I needed, but I did my best to coat all sides, and I will be using that here in a little bit. I put my Instant Pot onto the saute mode with a little bit of olive oil, and I seared it on each side for 3 minutes. I poured in 2 cups of water. I threw in 2 beef bouillon cubes, and then I just poured in those extra seasonings. So I'm going to lock that lid in, and I'm going to hit the meat button, and it only needs to cook for 60 minutes. So that time on there was incorrect. But while my meat was cooking, I'm going to get started on the sauce that's going to go over the ramen. So I had to order these chilies off of Amazon. I couldn't find them anywhere around me, and I actually got the ancho ones wrong. It was supposed to be something else, but I know that's commonly used as well, so I didn't sweat it. Couldn't pronounce the first one, but I have never dealt with dried chilies before, so I'm just kind of winging it here, but I know that you have to remove the stems and all the seeds, so I just kind of slid it down the middle, and they pretty much all fell out. It wasn't too bad, a little bit time consuming, but I got that all added to like a medium saucepan, followed by 3 Roma tomatoes that I just sliced in half. I bought some whole cloves. I've never used that before. I threw 2 of those in. I'm also throwing in 2 bay leaves. For spices, we'll need some oregano, cumin, cinnamon, some salt, and I'm going to be using the juice of 2 limes. I absolutely love lime juice on a lot of different things. Now I'm just adding in some water, and I'm going to let that boil for 10 minutes. Then I'm going to turn off the heat, remove it from the burner, and I'm going to let it get to room temperature. So at this point, my meat was done. I transferred it to a different bowl to make it easier to shred. And once again, I think this cook time was a little bit off. I think it needed to be a little bit longer because half of the beef was like super tender, just like it should be. And the other half was a little bit harder to shred, so that's always kind of annoying, but I finally got it done and it all worked out in the end. Back to that sauce pot, now that's at room temperature, I'm just removing the bay leaves and cloves. That second clove was harder to find, but I was able to do it during that step when I was straining it. I got the chilies and everything added to my blender, and I just blend that until everything was perfectly smooth. So I'm just running that over my like fine mesh strainer over top of that same sauce pot that I boiled everything in, and I'm taking my wooden spoon trying to push everything through it, and this definitely took a lot of patience. Here I am taking that cooking water and just pouring it over it to help, and I ended up switching my strainers because this one worked a lot better. It's not as fine as the other one, and I ended up adding about 4 additional cups of water. So I'm just letting that come back up to a boil, and now I'm going to start cooking my ramen. So I did about 4 packs, and of course I'm not using the flavor packets that come with it. I just threw those away. But now I'm going to start assembling my bowl. So I got a good amount of the ramen, 2 big spoonfuls of the sauce, a good amount of that beef. And for toppings, I just did some cilantro and some lime juice, which squirted in my camera lens. This meal was pretty chaotic, and it honestly was a lot more time consuming than I thought it was going to be, but I was also filming it on my phone for like TikTok and on my camera for YouTube, so that takes a lot of extra time, but overall it was really good. I don't know how often I would make this just because of all the steps and the mess and all that, but I'm really glad that I had this experience, and yeah, it was super good. But that is going to be it for this video. I really hope that you enjoyed it and found a recipe that you would like to try. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. I hope you all have an amazing and safe weekend, and I will see y'all in my next video. Bye, guys.